You click because somewhere in the back of your mind you already know that the snacks sitting in your pantry right now taste like nothing, cost too much, and disappear the moment you open the bag. I spent most of my life eating that way. Then I found out that the plainest people in America were making snacks that lasted for months, cost pennies, and fed a working family through winter without a single wrapper. That knowledge did not vanish by accident. It was set aside so you would keep paying. I want to be honest with you before I say another word. I did not believe any of this. I thought it was nostalgia dressed up as wisdom, old folks romanticizing hard times. But there is a recipe written down in an Ohio Amish community cookbook from 1977 that I tested with my own hands, and it changed my mind completely. I will give you that one near the end, because it is the strangest and the best of all of them. And every single thing I am about to tell you works in the kitchen you already have. No barn, no acreage, no permission. I remember standing in a gravel driveway in Holmes County, Ohio, a few autumns back, watching an older woman in a plain dress hand her grandchildren something wrapped in wax paper. No plastic, no brand. The children ate it like it was candy. I asked what it was, and she smiled and said it was just cracker pudding left over from Sunday. I had never heard those two words together in my life. That moment is the reason I started digging. And the deeper I dug, the angrier I got at how much had been quietly taken from people like you and me. Let me start with the one I was sure was folklore. Somebody told me the Amish keep snacks that never go in a refrigerator and never go bad, and I laughed. Everything spoils. That is the first thing modern life teaches you. Buy it. Use it fast. Throw it out. Buy it again. That cycle is the whole business model of the grocery store, and I had been feeding it for 40 years. So I looked into it, expecting to catch the myth. What I found instead was something called apple snitz. The word comes from the old German word for a slice or a cut piece, and the Pennsylvania Dutch have been drying apples this way since at least the 1700s. They take apples, core them, slice them thin, and dry them until they turn leathery and dark. That is it. No sugar, no chemicals. And here is the part that stopped me cold. Properly dried snitz keeps for a full year at room temperature in a cloth sack or a paper bag. A whole year. I'd been throwing out apples that went soft in 10 days. The science backs it up, and this is where my skepticism started to crack. Researchers at the United States Department of Agriculture have documented that when you bring the moisture content of an apple down to about 20%, the fruit becomes an environment where mold and bacteria simply cannot grow. There is not enough water left for them to live. The Amish did not know the percentage. They did not need to. They learned by hand, generation after generation, that a slice dried until it bends but does not snap will outlast the coldest winter. They were doing food preservation science 200 years before anyone put it in a laboratory. Now here is what really got me. A pound of fresh apples might cost you $2, and it is gone in a day or two. But a pound of dried snitz is a concentrated snack you can carry in your pocket, feed to a child, drop into a pot of ham and dumplings, or eat straight through a long afternoon. The Amish make a traditional dish called snitz, a nep, dried apples cooked with ham and dumplings, and it was born entirely from the fact that these apples kept when nothing else did. They turned preservation into a meal. They turned thrift into a tradition. I dried my first batch in my own oven on the lowest setting with the door cracked open, no special equipment, nothing bought. 4 days later, I had a bag of snitz sitting on my counter, and 3 weeks after that, it was exactly the same, sweet and chewy and perfectly good. That was the moment I stopped laughing. But it also raised a harder question, one I could not shake. If drying food was this simple and this cheap, why did nobody I grew up with know how to do it? Who benefited from me not knowing? That question is where this stops being a cooking story and starts being something else. Because the answer is that somebody did benefit. When I started reading the household manuals from the 1800s, I realized that drying, smoking, and preserving your own food at home was completely normal for ordinary American families. It was not a specialty. It was just Tuesday. Then something shifted. In the early 1900s, as commercial canning and packaged snack foods spread, an enormous marketing effort went to work convincing housewives that homemade preservation was old-fashioned, backward, even dangerous. The message was simple. Let us do it for you. Buy the box. Trust the brand. And within 2 generations, most families forgot how to keep their own food alive. The Amish did not forget. They never took the bait. And that is the whole reason their snacks survived while ours got replaced with air and plastic and a price tag. Which brings me to the second thing I was certain could not be real. A man at a produce auction told me the Amish make a snack out of leftover bread that people actually beg for, and I thought he was pulling my leg. Leftover bread is garbage. That is what I was taught. Stale bread goes to the birds. But he was talking about something the Pennsylvania Dutch call nep and roasted bread, and more specifically about brown butter bread, and once I understood the thinking behind it, I felt a little ashamed of how much bread I had thrown away in my life. Here is the logic that runs through every one of these snacks, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Nothing is waste. Everything has a second life. Old bread does not get thrown out. It gets torn into pieces, toasted in a heavy skillet with butter until it turns golden and nutty, and either eaten as a crunchy snack or dropped into warm milk with a little sugar and cinnamon to make what the children called milk toast. For generations of Amish and Old Order Mennonite families, milk toast was the warm bedtime snack, the thing you ate when you were sick, the comfort food that cost almost nothing because it was made from the bread that would otherwise have gone hard. And the history here is deeper than most people realize. Milk toast appears in American household cookbooks going all the way back to the 1800s. Fanny Farmer included versions of it. It was considered nursery food and invalid food, gentle on the stomach, warming, and endlessly cheap. But it faded from most American kitchens right around the same time boxed cereal took over the breakfast table in the 1950s and 60s. Think about that. A warm, filling, nearly free snack made from bread you already bought was replaced by a cold bowl of flakes that cost more per serving and left the children hungry an hour later. That was not an accident of taste. That was a business decision made in a boardroom, and it worked on nearly everybody. But it did not work on the plain communities, because they measured a food by whether it fed a working body, not by whether it came in a colorful box. Now, let me build the trust here with a number, because I know some of you are still where I was, arms crossed, waiting for the catch. A family that saves its stale bread instead of tossing it and turns it into brown bread, snacks, and milk toast easily keeps 3 to 4 loaves a month out of the trash. Over a year, that is dozens of loaves. At today's bread prices, that is real money. $40, $50, $60 a year, just from refusing to throw away one thing. And the snack you get in return is one that my own grandchildren ask for a second bowl of, which is more than I can say for anything I ever poured out of a cardboard box. But bread and apples were the easy part. The thing that truly broke my skepticism open was learning what the Amish do with milk that has gone sour, because that is where I was absolutely certain they had crossed the line into something unsafe. And I was wrong in a way that actually made me a little emotional. Sour milk, to me, meant spoiled, meant poison. Pour it down the drain and scrub the glass. But in the old Pennsylvania Dutch kitchen, milk that had clabbered, that had naturally soured and thickened, was not spoiled at all. It was the beginning of something. They used sour milk and clabber to make a fresh, soft cheese, and they used it in baking to make the tenderest cakes and biscuits you have ever eaten. There is a whole category of Amish baked goods built on sour milk, and the reason is beautiful in its simplicity. Before refrigeration, milk soured constantly. So instead of fighting it, they built their food around it. Here is what the science says, and this is where I really had to sit down. When raw milk sours naturally, it is not rotting the way we think of rotting. It is fermenting. Beneficial lactic acid bacteria multiply and lower the pH, and that acidic environment actually protects the milk from the dangerous pathogens that would make you sick. This is the exact same process behind yogurt, behind buttermilk, behind kefir, foods we now pay premium prices for at the health food store and call probiotic. The Amish were eating cultured probiotic dairy 100 years before the word probiotic was printed on a single label, and they got it for free out of the milk that was already in the house. Let me be clear and careful here, because I always want to be straight with you. This tradition grew up around fresh raw milk from a family's own cow, milk that soured under natural bacterial cultures. That is a different thing from modern pasteurized milk left out on a counter, which can spoil in a way that is genuinely unsafe. I am not telling you to leave a jug out and drink it. I am telling you what these communities did and why it worked in their world. And the point that stayed with me is the mindset. They did not see decay, they saw transformation. They understood that food is alive, and that some of the most nourishing things we can eat come from letting it change rather than fighting to keep it frozen in place. That mindset alone is worth more than any single recipe, because once you have it, you start seeing free food everywhere you used to see trash. If you want to go deeper into this world before we continue, I have put everything I have uncovered, the techniques, the history, and the recipes I tested myself into a book called The Amish Blueprint. It is also part of a broader collection that includes Amish Reset and Deeper Roots, and all of it is available in the description below. These are not recipes dressed up with pretty photographs. They are working methods, the kind that kept plain families fed and independent for generations, written down so you can use them in the kitchen you already have. If what I have told you so far has unsettled you even a little, the books will unsettle you a great deal more in the best possible way. And I promised you this would work in your life, not some imaginary farm. So let me stop right here and talk to you directly, because I know exactly who some of you are. You are sitting in an apartment or a small house in town. You do not have a cow. You do not have a garden. You do not have a cellar or a smokehouse or any of the things you picture when you hear the word Amish. And you are thinking this is a nice story, but it is not for you. I put this next part in specifically for you, because I was in that same spot when I started, and I found out I was wrong about that too. You do not need any of it. Here is a snack you can make tonight with what is already in your kitchen. It is called Amish popcorn, but it is not the popcorn you are thinking of, and this is the one I want you to actually try before you finish watching. The Plain communities have long made a caramel popcorn that keeps for weeks in a tin, and the secret is not fancy equipment, it is a technique. You pop plain corn kernels, and if you do not have a pot, you can use a paper bag in the microwave with nothing added, which costs a fraction of what pre-pop bags cost. Then you make a simple coating from butter, brown sugar, and a little baking soda. That baking soda is the trick nobody tells you about. When it hits the hot sugar, it foams and lightens the caramel so it coats every piece thin and crisp instead of gluing it into a brick. You pour it over the popcorn, spread it out, and let it set. I did the math on this one because I did not believe the savings could be real. A large bag of caramel corn at the store runs $4 to $5 and is mostly air. A pound of plain popcorn kernels costs about $1.50 and makes gallons of popcorn, enough for many batches. Add the butter and sugar, and you are still looking at pennies per serving. You are getting fresher, better tasting caramel corn for less than a tenth of the price, made in the home you already have, with no special anything. That is not a farm skill, that is a town skill. That is a right now skill. And once you have made that one thing with your own hands and tasted how much better it is, something changes in you. You start to distrust the aisle. You start to wonder what else they told you that you could not do, that you actually could do all along. Because here is the pattern I finally understood, the thing that turned my doubt into something closer to quiet anger. Every one of these snacks shares three traits. They are cheap, they keep without refrigeration, and they are made from things most people throw away. Those three traits are exactly what the packaged food industry cannot sell you. There is no profit in teaching you to preserve your own apples, save your own bread, or coat your own popcorn. The profit is in convincing you that you cannot, that it is too hard, too old-fashioned, too risky, and that you are better off buying the bag. That message did not come from nowhere. It was manufactured deliberately over decades. But let me get to the snack that finally erased the last of my doubt, because it involves keeping meat without a refrigerator, and if you had told me that was safe, I would have walked away. The Amish and their forebears made a snack from meat that could hang in a dry room for weeks, and eating it did not make anyone sick. My whole modern brain screamed that this was impossible. Meat spoils. Meat is dangerous. And yet, dried and cured meat is one of the oldest preserved foods on earth. And the Pennsylvania Dutch made their own dried beef and their own smoked, cured pork with nothing but salt, smoke, and thyme. Dried beef, in particular, was a staple, shaved thin and folded into a cream gravy over toast, or eaten in strips as a working man's snack in the field. The science is old and it is solid. Salt draws water out of meat through simple osmosis, and just like with the apples, once the moisture drops low enough, the bacteria that cause spoilage cannot survive. Smoke adds a second layer of protection because compounds in wood smoke are naturally antimicrobial and they slow the fats from going rancid. This is not a trick. This is chemistry that has kept human beings alive through winters for thousands of years. The Amish simply never stopped practicing it, while the rest of us handed the entire job to a refrigerator in a factory and forgot it was ever ours to do. And think about what that dependence really costs you. Not just the money, though the money is real. The bigger cost is that if the power goes out, if the supply chain stumbles, if the truck does not come, most families today have no idea how to keep a single thing from spoiling. The Amish are not worried about that. They never handed away the skill. That independence is the thing I came to envy the most. More than the taste, more than the savings. They are not afraid of their own pantry. Now I want to give you what I promised at the very beginning, the recipe from that Ohio community cookbook that finally made a believer out of me. It sat in a collection of recipes gathered from Amish and Mennonite households and printed in 1977, the kind of spiral-bound book sold at a fire hall or a school fundraiser, the kind nobody thinks to look at twice. And inside it was a dessert snack I had never heard of in my entire life, cracker pudding. I need you to sit with how strange this is, because that strangeness is exactly why it survived and why nobody tried to sell it to you. It is a pudding made from crackers, specifically from common soda crackers, the plainest, cheapest crackers you can buy, the ones that go soft and stale in the box before you finish them. The Amish took that failing, forgotten cracker and turned it into a warm, custardy dessert that families served at weddings and Sunday dinners. Here is roughly how it goes, and I have made it myself, so I am not reading you a fairy tale. You scald milk in a pot, a good amount of it. You beat eggs with sugar and stir them in gently to make a custard, the way you would for any old-fashioned pudding. Then, instead of thickening it with cornstarch or flour, you fold in crushed soda crackers and shredded coconut. The crackers soften and swell and vanish into the custard, thickening it into something rich and comforting, and the tiny bit of salt in the crackers does something a plain pudding never does. It balances the sweetness. It makes it taste finished. You cook it gently until it coats the spoon, and you eat it warm or cold. The first time I tasted it, I actually set the spoon down and stared at the bowl, because it was genuinely delicious, and it was made from three of the humblest things in any kitchen: stale crackers, milk, eggs, ingredients that together cost maybe $1 for a whole family's dessert. I had spent my life buying pudding cups in plastic 4-packs, paying for the plastic, the printing, the shipping, the shelf space, and the brand, when a woman in a plain kitchen in Ohio could make something better out of the crackers I would have thrown away. And here is why this recipe is the perfect ending to my investigation, the thing that ties the whole mystery together. Cracker pudding could only exist in a culture that refused to waste. It is the direct opposite of everything the modern food business teaches. It takes the cheapest, most disposable item in the pantry and treats it as worthy of a wedding table. That is not just a recipe. That is a whole philosophy of respect for food, for money, for the labor that went into making it. The Amish preserved that philosophy when the rest of America traded it for convenience. And now, because a group of plain women bothered to write their recipes down in a fundraiser cookbook in 1977, you have it back. It was never lost. It was just kept quietly by people who were never impressed by the box. Let me pull it all together, because by now I hope you feel the same shift I felt standing in that gravel driveway. What I thought was nostalgia turned out to be a working system. Apple snitz that lasts a year. Brown bread and milk toast made from the loaf you were going to waste. Sour milk turned into probiotic cheese and tender cakes. Caramel popcorn for 1/10 of the store price. Made tonight, in your kitchen, with no special tools. Dried and cured meat that survives without a refrigerator. And cracker pudding, the crown of it all, a dessert conjured out of the crumbs at the bottom of the box. Every one of them cheap, every one of them keeps, every one of them born from the refusal to throw good things away. What you are really feeling right now is not a craving for a snack. It is the memory of something that was taken from you, a whole way of feeding your family that was traded away for wrappers and brands and a lifetime of buying the same thing over and over. You clicked on this because part of you already suspected that the plainest people in America knew something the rest of us had been talked out of. And you were right. You were right the whole time. You are the kind of person who does not believe that everything worth having has to come sealed in plastic with a price tag on it. You are the kind of person who suspects, correctly, that a great deal of useful knowledge was quietly pushed aside so that somebody else could keep profiting from your forgetting. That instinct is not paranoia. It is memory, and it is worth trusting. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer this one. Of everything I laid out today, which snack did you already know about? Was there a grandmother in your family who made milk toast when you were sick? Or dried apples in the fall, or a pudding out of crackers that you had completely forgotten until right now? Tell me in the comments. Tell me what she called it, because these names change from valley to valley and I collect them. And tell me where you are watching from, because I am always amazed how far these old ways traveled before they went quiet. If any of this stirred something in you, come along with the rest of us who are digging these methods back out of the ground where they were buried. This is not about a channel. It is about a whole group of people deciding quietly and stubbornly to recover the knowledge that made our grandparents so much more independent than we are. Because the next thing I want to show you is even harder to believe than cracker pudding. It is the way the Amish keep butter fresh on a shelf at room temperature for weeks, with no refrigeration at all, using nothing but water and a single old crock. I tested it. I did not think it would work. It worked, and once you see how simple it is, you are going to be just as unsettled as I was about why nobody ever told you. Stay with me, and I will show you exactly how it is done. Before you go, let me tell you where this leads. This video was the overview, but inside I share the exclusive continuation, tested step by step. Inside you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself, never a machine. And you won't be alone here in the Plain Living Society. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen. You can cancel anytime. Come join me.